Okay, so good morning, everyone. Uh, my name is Ryan Dietrich. Rob Simon is also on the call with us. We're both from a company called Sharp CFO based here in Northeast Ohio. We are joined by a joint venture between the Eastern Lake County Chamber and the Chardon Chamber of Commerce. So ladies, thank you both very much for allowing us the opportunity to present to our fellow members and for being willing to collaborate. I think it's really important that we do that now. And Rob and I have been on several of these presentations. We've had mixed audiences of service providers and business owners and large and small companies and medium companies, and the presentation that we're going to give here is also pretty fluid in that a lot has changed from the first time that we presented it till now, and it's a very basic presentation. No super groundbreaking, earth-shattering information. The basics of cash flow management. We're all in different industries and all see different situations. So what I would say is, I do have the chat feature on. If there are any questions at all that anyone has specifically, just put it in the box. I'm gonna let Rob guide us through the presentation because again, he's the more seasoned one at giving it and has his own notes and things like that. If there are any questions specifically about your business outside of this that you have for us, our contact information will be at the end, or you can reach out to either chamber that you're a member of to get a hold of us if you need to. So again, my name is Ryan. We started our company about 2.5 years ago. We work as CFOs, controllers, and analysts in both the small and middle markets, 1 to 5 days a week on an interim or a fractional basis. So 1 to 5 days a week, either on location in the business or virtually, whatever works for you in our situation. We have boots on the ground in several states. Right now, we're actively marketing, obviously, here in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, starting to get into more of Western Ohio and the Indiana and Kentucky, where we're helping clients that we have. And our backgrounds are in logistics, manufacturing, hospitality, retail, MRO, which is maintenance and repair, banking, and risk management. So we're bringing you a variety of different perspectives on how to manage cash flow. It's not necessarily about, I know the hot topic is the PPP and getting that money and using it. We focus with our clients more on using the money responsibly that you get and not so much in how you get that money. So in this, if you're on here to find out how you can get the money, you're going to be disappointed. It's going to be more about how to use it. So I'll hand it over to Rob. So again, Rob Simon's been with us since about September and has worked, him and I have worked very closely together to develop the business to meet our client demands of what they need and the various projects that we've got out there. And again, any questions you have, just put in the little chat box, and we'll do our best to answer as much as we can. So, all right, Rob, take it away, buddy.
All righty, thank you, Ryan. Good morning. As I said, I'm Rob Simon. I have actually, just brief history guys, I've spent over 30 years in small business, primarily totally in the moving and storage industry. In the company I was the CFO for 21 of those 30 years as well. So really from the standpoint with cash and with cash management, it's always really been a big passion of mine. It's something I've always focused on doing because I think it is a sustainer. It is something very important, I think, especially within small business. And it just goes back kind of to my original fixation, so to speak, or liking with finance. And I'm going to start with my favorite quote that I learned a long time ago. And it's from the economist Frederick R. Adler. He was circa in the 1880s, this circa 1886 quote. So it actually applies very well today after all this time. But it is the quote, "Happiness is a positive cash flow," unquote. And if we all as business owners know that, we always want to keep what's coming in, obviously. But again, cash flow is about managing the in and the out. And I think it's something that has taken much more precedence, obviously, over the last 6 weeks, but it's really something from a business standpoint that should be being done all along in good times or in slower times. And I think the thing to realize now with this pandemic is that this is not just a 6-week stop or a 6-week trip up. As the state of Ohio opens up, as the country itself begins to open up, we're not going to, economically and other aspects, we're not immediately going back to March 11th or March 10th. This is going to be a bit of a longer cycle, probably in terms of a lot of things picking back up. So there's going to need to be a 12, 18 month probably focus on cash or liquidity, on the balance sheet, on the supply chain, on the organizational workforce and that allocation. So when we talk about cash flow ins and outs, first thing we're talking about obviously are receivables. Receivables obviously are the in. But one of the important part to look at though with receivables in some cases within your business is the invoicing process. Is it streamlined? Is it efficient? Obviously, the faster a product or service can get invoiced after it's been delivered or given, the quicker you can turn that service and product into cash. Now, to the receivable, they're fine on paper, but we want them to be is green and be cash and be in the bank. So obviously, with that, receivables must be monitored. They must be tracked. That's the idea of an aging report. But you need to there needs to be a system. There needs to be a system whereby an invoice that was generated to a customer for the product or the service gets recorded to a report where it's accessible and readable and be able to see until that receivable then was paid. Then it can come off once you have the cash in the bank. You need to monitor and kind of maybe set days paid. Maybe with certain clients can be 15 days, 30 days, maybe it's 10 days, maybe it's 45. There may be some client contracts that actually might be 60-day payable structure, which will make a credit manager cringe. But sometimes that might be the case. But you have to focus there, on that. And the big thing too, obviously said, is know your customer cycles. There are going to be customers that are going to fast. There are going to be customers that are going to pay from the standpoint of a timely basis. There are going to be customers that are going to slow. They're going to be a little bit more slower paying. So part of your planning relative to cash flow is obviously know those customers, know where they are within that cycle, because then you can better plan your receivables, and you also know for certain ones when kind of they're a little bit later than what they usually are in terms of maybe having to contact them. There's a lot of talk today, obviously, from the standpoint of the situation, do some empathy and understanding some pieces with customers, maybe having to do a little bit of some workout plans or something with them from the standpoint of paying. But obviously you've got to obviously keep the focus on your business and what you need if you're going to change that.
But with receivables, just to kind of add in a little bit on top of what Rob's saying, we hear a lot about empathetic marketing. Empathetic collecting also is going to be huge 90, 120, 150 days from now, where people our customers who bought from us now or bought from us a couple months ago maybe won't be able to pay in a couple of months. And when the cycle turns around, it's going to have to be, well, look, yeah, we understand, we went through it too. And to continue positive on our end as the provider of the service, we still need to get some kind of a payment. So we're all going to be willing to say, oh, sure, pay me in 60-day terms, but there's got to be a giving to get kind of a thing, right? Like, sure, I'll give you 60 days to pay, but I need automatic payments set up. Hopefully that makes sense to people who actually issue terms to their clients. I'm not just going to give you 60 days to pay me. I need some kind of a guarantee that I'm also going to get paid. I understand what you're going through. So, yeah, I mean, that's just as important as being flexible.
And then obviously on our outside, we have payables. Now, obviously payables, especially now with cash management, it's about the priorities. So payroll is always going to be a priority. Rent is a priority going into any week when it's due. Interest expense, debt obligations, utilities, insurance premiums, those are always probably going to be absolute must if they got to be paid within that week to do. And then you need to make a selection on from there the rest of what's necessary and what's most important to pay. And depending upon your cash, depending upon your forecasts, there may be some things you kind of want to pay this week that you might have to postpone. Maybe you have to wait until next week as you look at what you have and where things are. So it's about making choices. In many cases, choices aren't necessarily easy, but they have to be made, and they need to be made from a kind of from a rational, factual basis relative to the business, not so much kind of an emotional side with it. But if there is a supplier partner that you had scheduled, said you'd get paid this week, it's not going to be able to be. And the point is communicate to that supplier partner that you're going to have. You need to make a change. It needs to be next week, and that'll be your and that can be the commitment for that. And going back, we talked about receivables. I mean, obviously, communicate with them in the way that you would want a customer to communicate to you if they're going to have to maybe slow down. Maybe they needed to wait a week by which to pay you. Just maybe practice that golden rule in terms of treating the way you would want to be treated. And obviously, additionally, too, anything that you can cut from an expense standpoint that's not necessary, that's not mission critical, needs to be cut. Or if there are other services or products you can find, or ways by which you can decrease the price on something that you're purchasing or buying, then by all means, maybe that can be negotiated with a supplier or a carrier.
It's also going to be important to start thinking about costs that we cut maybe a couple of months ago when all this started. Is what do we need to bring back, and when, and how often? Which is where I think we talk about it later, but the 13-week rolling cash flow statement, that's really important to have had all along, but especially now to know what is our cash going to look like coming in of the expenses that we cut. What can we bring back? That's going to be a big thing, I think, for a lot of people.
So with the subsidizing manufacturer aspects and distributing with inventory, the big thing from a simple standpoint is know what you have, know what you need, know what your customers want. And it's how you really kind of need to really try to gear it. I think coming back out of the shutdowns as well, it's going to be a matter of looking at, are there items in any part of inventory, be it the raw materials, be it a work in progress part, be it something that's finished, that has expired, that needs to be replaced, that you can't use anymore, and is it going to have to be purchased? And then obviously with that, you probably need some coordination with finance and the financial team and department from the standpoint of obviously buying more of that material. And are there payments that slow down to that particular vendor that they're going to need to get paid first as well for that to be provided? So that's kind of a main entry there. And then again, having an accurate current record of what your inventory is, so you can track it, and that you know what's used and know what's sold, is something always that's important from the standpoint of tracking that and determining where's your cash locked up, because you can get careful when you get cash locked up in inventory that maybe isn't moving as well, or the customers have shifted away from, and maybe you're understocked on other materials and other inventory that is moving. So there maybe some things need to be done in there from the standpoint of maybe liquidating some of the less popular items right now to try to sell them or bundle them together with other products by which to sell. But again, it's a matter of it's a monitor and manage aspect, and a point of, again, knowing there's cash locked up in inventory. You want to sell it and turn it and get it back into cash.
I know a lot of people are making, a lot of manufacturing companies anyway now are going to start shifting over to making masks for everybody. Well, what do you do with the stuff that you have on the shelf to make room for the mass quantities of masks that you're going to be producing? And if you make a lot of masks, What happens if you can't get rid of them all and they're going to sit on your shelf, and how are you going to deal with it? So all things to really think about right now when shifting to a different manufacturing process, or even a buying process, where let's say you're the guy buying a bunch of masks for all of your employees. Where are you going to keep them on your shelf? Is it going to take up space for things that you actually need to keep on your shelves to continue your own operation? Let's see.
So within revenue, one thing, especially has been throughout the close down a little bit, maybe to address is, are there new additional services or products that the company can offer that is needed within this marketplace and within this environment now? I mean, we know the stories of all kinds of companies that have changed. I mean, sunless tanning went from creating a tanning spray to going into sanitizer, because obviously there was a huge need for that. They retooled a lot of automobile plants to make ventilators, obviously for the need for that standpoint. So there could be things, from the standpoint again of discussing with your team in monitoring sales trends that you have or saw from customer needs in terms of quantities or and types of what they were ordering. But I think another aspect that you got to make sure to keep in mind is quality, because especially now you don't want issues or a decrease in quality of product or in quality of service. Again, revenue is a way by which to increase cash. So we can impact and affect cash flow by getting something else revenue-wise that maybe produces more or sells better than how we're currently doing it.
And I like to use the example of restaurants that right now, I mean, obviously they're taking a really huge hit. And a month and a half ago, it was a little more relevant. But if I owned a restaurant a month ago and then the government said, hey, you guys got to stop letting people in the door, and I'm staring at a cooler full of inventory and full of meat and ingredients that are going to expire in a few days. I also know that a lot of my customers are staying at home right now, and I know that they have to cook on their own. And a lot of people come to my restaurant because they don't know how to cook, or they don't have time to, or they don't know really what to use and how to make anything other than grilled cheese. I'm going to assemble my ingredients and start hosting videos and showing people how to cook and prepare food and how to store food and how to prep food and about expiration dates and things like that. And it doesn't necessarily mean even about capitalizing on that right now, but it's how do you use the tools that you have at your disposal to stay relevant to people? Maybe it can be monetized in some way, but it's really important right now to think about how we can actually use what we have to either increase the number of people that we're in front of, to stay in front of the people that we need to stay in front of, and leveraging things like social media to let people know that you still exist and why they should be coming to you.
Alrighty, so within cost reductions, as much as anything, really kind of focusing on the efficiencies of the operation. Especially now, a lot of things have been remote. There may be more evidence or sight from the standpoint of redundant tasks or processes that slow or add cost, or looking at maybe the process things that were done that maybe they really truly don't need to be done, or they can be combined in a different way. I mean, just these little ways by which can obviously reduce cost, and if we can reduce cost, we can increase cash by that. So in many cases, again, it goes back. Talk to your team about improvement areas. Maybe they obviously could be things that they know very well from a front line on the job basis standpoint, to know some things that can be done, and as well as focusing on a little bit more what are the critical items and critical tasks and critical responsibilities to perform. Not so much what's needed or wanted. I mean, that part can be overcome, but more from the standpoint again of what's critical to the business, what's critical to the quality, what's critical to what is being produced and given as the service. With relationships, one of the main things you should have with your bank is you should have a personal relationship banker that you directly deal with, that handles your account within and for the bank, not a phone number, not a big kind of rotation with it. Banks right now too are very focused on their customers, what their customer needs, and in many cases what their current loan portfolios, current loans are, obviously from the standpoint of protecting themselves, but obviously also doing a lot from the standpoint of servicing their customers relative to the government and SBA loan programs as well to get those applied for in terms of protecting. The thing with the bank of those is be open and share and be forthright with where you're at and what some of the issues are and what you're seeing, what you're projecting. Bankers can help and banks will help, but they don't like to be surprised, and they can't help and add anything to what they don't know about. Businesses really should have a line of credit as well with their bank. It's not necessarily. It's a good safety net and a good fallback, obviously, by which to have and to need. And obviously, with that is going to come some additional reporting to the bank in terms of financial statements and records. There may be some other certain ratios, what are called covenants that are going to have to be met by the bank, and some other security reporting there. But again, as a safety net for the business, it's an ideal fallback. Another relationship too that you should have strong, if you don't have it, you need to get is right now is a CPA. Your business should have a CPA. There are a lot of things between the payroll protection program and those offerings, and some other things the IRS has done, for example, that having a CPA be very good. So, for example, with the IRS now, just from a cash basis standpoint a little bit too, if you're projecting you're going to have losses, for example, taxable losses in 2020, you are able to amend previous years particularly if you had income in, say, 2019, 2018 reported on your taxes, and you can amend those taxes to report your losses back to that period so you can get in for the refund now rather than having to wait to advance years to be able to show those losses carry forward. But that's a reason, that's something you need to discuss with your CPA or bring up as well. Again, if you don't have a CPA, you really should get one and have one for the business. There may be some things too, maybe within your equipment that you now have too, and other assets that maybe you realize you don't necessarily need or not using full force. If they're saleable and marketable and they're not going to make a difference to your operation, then it might be something you want to look at liquidating or selling that asset from the standpoint of creating cash for it too. And let's see, relative to, so moving a little bit forward to risk, obviously we're very well aware, your main business insurance policies should be reviewed. It's something that really should be reviewed yearly, but especially now. And I think a lot of what's come up with a lot of those policies, obviously, is the business interruption clauses that are in some of those policies. There are now lawsuits going against insurance companies for denying those. People believe that they should apply to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the way most of the policies are written, they're really not written that way. They're written off the guise that if something were to really happen and damage to the property, to force you not to be able to operate your business. So there are some suits from there to look at. But again, know your policy and understand that. And there's some state laws pending on that as well. But that is something that easily could be reviewed annually and should be relative to what the business is and to what into what those coverages are. The other thing, there are a lot of coverages in the insurance policy too that are based on payroll and based on sales. Expectation from most companies is going to be in 2020 that sales and revenue are liable to be down. Payroll obviously is liable to be down. So again, there are audits that are done on those policies. There's possibility there should be possibly some cash that's going to be returned from your premiums for that, but probably not until next year. But it's also going to be, you're going to have to, when you make those projections for 2021, it's going to be a bit more difficult because 2020 is going to be a bit of an aberration, probably relative to revenue and payroll costs and to how those premiums and insurance and those rates are set. The other thing that's popping up to be a little bit aware of from an insurance standpoint and a possible cost standpoint too is medical insurance. I mean, obviously, in a standard full coverage type of medical policy, premiums obviously have stayed the same, but like everything else, people aren't going to the doctor as much, obviously. There's a lot more telemedicine. So there's actually been some decrease in the costs. Well, the problem that the medical insurance companies are having is, especially with the renewals coming up July 1st, for example, is they don't know how to price them right now because there've been a lot of drops in there. They're not totally sure what to expect for the next year relative to this pandemic. Are things going to come up? Is there going to be a big rush beginning on Monday because elective surgeries now can happen again at hospitals? So there conceivably are going to be some pretty high, maybe even double-digit, usually double-digit increases in possible medical insurance. So again, just kind of be guarded on that. And the other thing is going to be probably a bit slow is you're not going to get those renewal offers as early as has been done in the past as they try to sort out. So there's a couple things just on the horizon again from a cash management and a cash a standpoint. But I think again a lot of this goes back to some obviously internal processes and just being ready and being guarded for it. And there might be some things too with contracts you have with certain customers or with particular supplier partners as well. Contracts, you understand those terms, that there aren't certain service level agreements built in there that require you to meet certain levels or certain requirements that are going to affect your contract or what you're getting paid or how that was set up. So just be familiar and again know those. Understand and know your rental contract as well in terms of the parameters of that and certain conditions of payment. In those lines. So in conclusion.
Well, before you go that way,
I'm sorry.
Talking about risk and how it applies to cash flow is, I mean, if we're not aware of the risks right now, it's going to cost us a whole lot more later, obviously. I mean, that's a pretty obvious statement, right? But, in terms of the one thing that I think is really important that I don't hear really enough about is the cleanliness and maintenance plans in facilities. So I think it's really important more than ever right now to know what the risks are of not maintaining a clean environment for your employees and visitors. If somebody comes in and they claim that they got sick because they came into your building, well, it's going to be a little bit tough to prove, but it's very, very important right now to talk to an attorney that you might have on your staff or your team or in your network to say, what are my risks with people coming in? What do I need to provide? Do I need to give them a mask? Even though the governor said, well, it's not mandatory anymore. It's strongly suggested. Should we be providing them for people coming in? Should we be taking temperatures when they walk in the door? Our employees or visitors. What does it mean to have a clean building? Well, it means that there are a lot of different products out there, like a lot of people clean with bleach. I promise all of you that if you walk into the Cleveland Clinic in UH, there's no bleach on any shelf that's being used to clean any unit in the building. They use a hospital-grade quat-based disinfectant. So I would recommend that if you use a cleaning company, to ask them what type of cleaning products they use and what their regular schedule is to maintain the building. It's time to up that a little bit now, just to show, even if you don't believe in what's going on, to show that you care and they have some level of empathy for people coming in, and it minimizes your risk later from somebody coming in and saying, well, I got sick there. And you can say, no, look, I use these cleaners. I provide this PPE. Here's my daily log of checking and cleaning. And you have some level of CYA there in your facility. So, in my personal opinion, right now, that's the most important thing that of almost any of these, with minimizing risk. And that will affect cash flow later. Also, to piggyback on what Rob said, I mean, now's the time to know your banker really, really, really well. Even though they're kind of getting their butts kicked right now with managing the PPP and all these SBA programs. They're not going to know that you're struggling unless you tell them, and nobody wants to be surprised. Nobody wants you to go to bankruptcy. Nobody wants you to really be laying off employees. The risks involved in not spending that money right are also there, and that we were on one of these with one of our partners a couple of days ago, talking about how they're already forming committees to look for fraud and fraudulent spending of companies with the PPP money. You're supposed to spend it a very specific way, and if you're not doing that, they're gonna find you. So that goes back to the 13-week cash flow estimate, where you're making sure that you're using the money responsibly for what you actually need to use the money for based on the data from your estimates. Those estimates should be over a period of a few weeks to say, I know I have this money coming in. I know I'm going to spend this much money. I'm going to have this much money left. That's just my 2 cents there, Rob. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think that those are all really important now as we get back, to life.
And I think one thing too on the cleanliness, I think it's important, just like the employee handbook, is have a policy and have it be consistent. It could be just simply following what Governor DeWine has suggested in the main 4 points, but it needs to be, have it set for employees, have it set from the standpoint for apply the same from the standpoint to visitors. I think employers can even decide if they kind of even want to have visitors, quite frankly. So, but it doesn't matter. You can set a policy and have it be consistent. And there are things out there. Again, I would speak with your corporate counsel and legal business legal lawyer team too, as well from that standpoint. So, I think the big thing obviously with from standpoint of a budget and budgeting is know your costs, know your expense, know your payouts, know your revenue. Know your sales, know your inflows, and is that from a simple standpoint? It's about being rational and using rational thought from the standpoint of creating that budget and seeing things through an objective eyeglass for it as to how you're going to project and what you're looking at. You're going to have talk to your advisors, talk to business confidants, talk to your team. Within your company, bring in outside consultants if you feel that's better and that's what you need. But the big part of that, obviously, we've alluded to and talked about a little bit, is this 13-week cash flow projection. And it's something you should have set and to do, and it's something that then becomes rolling. So you're kind of looking at 13 weeks as it's ongoing, and in essence, kind of looking at a quarter of a year at all the time. Now, projecting out at the 13th week might be a little bit harder right now, particularly trying to determine revenue in those aspects, but it's not an exact science and you can adjust it as you go. But it's important, obviously, to know, what weeks are you processing payroll? So you know what it is and you can see what your number is. That's going to be next week. Then this week what you're looking at, what you're doing. When rent is within there, obviously, to know what you're projecting out, and again, being able to monitor your receivables of what is coming in and what you're looking for. But it would be and is a very important tool from that standpoint to manage overall what you have and what you're doing from that standpoint. And I'm going to hit on briefly one other part of this too. I think that I know it's come out a lot, is in essence really fraud vigilance. You probably with your bank should have some online banking and banking services that you can use to monitor your accounts and protect your accounts and see them daily and be able to see and know what's in there. I think fraud has become, obviously, although it seems to become more prevalent and more crafty, but I think with a lot of work and things being done remotely, it's also kind of been kind of an up-anteed situation a little bit with certain things. So your bank should have most of them are called positive pay, but it's basically you can register ACHs payments, you can register checks, so that you can, like for a check, you enter the date, the dollar amount, and the check number. And that check, when it goes to clear, has to exactly match up to what you entered, or it will be rejected. Or if somebody were to create their own dummy draft check and that check's registered in there, it's not going to pass through. It will get rejected. Same thing with a lot of ACH transmittals now. If you're doing them online through that, you probably should have at least a two-tiered structure, dual structure, whereby one person initiates that, and another person has to approve it. Again, just to avoid any fraud thing or any type of fraud, something issuing that shouldn't be. With checks too, if things continue remotely for your business, banks do have check writing services that they offer, so you can process the checks and the payment through the bank into the bank system. Again, somebody could make the selections, someone could then approve them. Kind of defeats the need of having to somehow print checks, have them signed, and getting them mailed out. So I think kind of concludes the main part. I think maybe just some comments and wrap up, and just some recap. Additionally, we all know cash is king. It's king at all times. And this is obviously at the time period now where we want to manage that cash and to keep it, and to make sure we're addressing our needs and what we need, and monitoring what we want daily, using that 13-week cash forecast as a budget. You make the changes, adjust it as it needs to be, from that standpoint, and maybe assigning that responsibility for that cash flow forecast to a person. Typically, that is the CFO's job, from the standpoint of doing it. But if you're not doing it yourself, have somebody trusted with it, and have a time set whereby that report is brought to you, where you have that daily to review and to go through. Again, there are ways by which through your online banking, you can manage and see your daily cash. You can see your beginning balance. You can know what you got coming in. You can see what you've got coming out, to manage it that way. I would also suggest kind of maintaining a register, so you know what's coming in and what's coming out. And again, you can see everything that you've processed and that you've done. So I think there's a myriad host of features here, some things that it's not so much trying to make it complex, try to keep it as simple as can be or needs to be for your business. But it's just a matter of managing through this as we go on, and as we go forward with it.
Yeah, and so thanks, Rob, and again, thanks to both chambers here for letting us have a little bit of time to talk about all this. I'd kind of like to open it up like more of like an open forum. If anybody has any questions, I can unmute everyone, and feel free to kind of chime in and ask whatever you need to here. Just anything that you're seeing in your business that you have a question about, or something that maybe another advisor has said, or you need a contact for someone, or anything at all related to cash flow. Anyone, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Stacia from the Chardon Chamber. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, great, thanks. Do you have any tools to recommend for that 13-week projection? Is there something you could share, some spreadsheet, something to help us with that?
Yeah, we have I do have a spreadsheet that I can share with you and with Linda, so that you guys can get it out there. It's fairly easy to understand and navigate. The only complicated part is just to look at the lines, but it'll automatically sum each line. But I'll definitely share that with you. It's just a spreadsheet that we use.
That'd be great. That'd be very helpful. Thank you.
I'd like to know from everyone on the call, has anyone had to reduce staff as a result of all this? No? Good.
No.
Good. Good.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Yeah, and again, if there's anything else that we can provide or do or answer or guide or whatever. I mean, it's kind of what we're doing. We're kind of in the mode, we're a small business too, and trying to keep up with the changes, and not only to learn about it for our own business and what we need to be doing differently, but for our clients and prospects and members that we're members of several groups. So we're trying to keep up as well as run a business too. So, we have the same struggles. So anything we can do to kind of commiserate is great.
This has
I'll
been
call you right back.
Call me right back.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Anything else from anyone at all before we conclude?
Just want to say thanks to Chardon for collaborating. Our chamber is a big collaborator, so anytime, please feel free to reach out. And just stay healthy, everybody, and keep your chin up. It'll be better soon.
That's right. We always get through things.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
This was really good. Thank you, guys.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
thanks for
Thanks a
having us.
lot,
I
everyone.
appreciate it.
Have a good day, and stay safe.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ryan,
Thanks.
Rob.
See ya.